All right, we're streaming.
Madam Chair, we are live on YouTube.
Thank you. Okay, we want to welcome everyone to our work meeting this morning. And I just want to remind you that a board work meeting is a place for the board to have discussion and gather information. No decisions or votes will be made during our work meeting. We are currently working on creating an academic calendar for the 2021-2022 school year. And as part of this process, we are exploring the pros and cons of a 4-day school week. Today we have two superintendents here to present to us on a 4-day school week. I want to thank them for joining us. They both had to travel quite a bit to get here. We will have our normal patron input time, and we'll hear from anyone that has filled out the green form. During the presentation and discussion time, if patrons have any questions, they can write them down, hand them to Mrs. DeGraw. Or if you're attending virtually, you are welcome to ask them on the YouTube chat and she'll get them to me. So go ahead and get started. Do you want to start with introductions?
Do we have an opening procedure for a call to order and approval of
Yeah,
agenda?
we'll formally call our meeting to order. If the floor would be open for a motion to approve the agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and do introductions. Thank you, Madam Chair, for being here, and also thank you to our invited guests. We'll just take, since we have our invited guests, we'll go ahead and do our board members just for them. So we'll start with our board, go through, and then we'll introduce our guests. And when we get to that, I'll let you guys introduce yourselves a little bit more, but we have Superintendent Mark Gee from the Preston School District. He's a regional representative for IASA for Region 5. Appreciate him. Busy schedule. He was just on a phone call with the Governor's Council, and so really appreciate him taking time to come here. And we also have Superintendent Dr. Spencer Barzee from the Westside School District, and I'll let them introduce themselves a little bit more, but Mr. Burnshaw, go ahead.
My name is Tyson Burnshaw. I've grown up out here. Been on the school board for a little over a year. I think maybe 13 months is all. So I'm pretty new. Just kind of learning. Glad to be here.
My name's Nedra Perkins. Grew up here in Hamer. My father was a teacher here and a principal for 43 years, so education was always important to me. Then I went to work at the Jordan School District in Utah and was there for 30 years. When we retired, my husband and I wanted to follow our son. So we moved here because he lives here and my other family members live here too. And so I'm back home, been here for 6 years, and they couldn't find anybody that wanted to be on the board in Hamer, so here I am. Plus I love education and that's what I do.
Okay, I'm Tanis Cherry. I grew up in the Rigby area, graduated from Ryrie.
We won't hold that against you.
I went to ISU and then met and married my husband, and he convinced me to move to Mud Lake. He farms out here. We have 3 children, and we just really enjoy being out here in the community.
I'm Willie Schmidt. I represent Zone 2. This coming year will be my 8th year on the board. I've lived here all my life. I'm a farmer. I did go to ISU after high school. I earned a couple VOTEC degrees, and happy to be here on the board.
I'm Andrea Rigby, and I am from Rigby. I love the last, Rigby name so much I changed it to my last name. And we live in the Montague area, and I'm the newest member of the board, and I've been here 11 months. Yeah. So yeah, just excited to be a part of things. We have 5 girls, and 4 of the 5 are in school here, so it's good to be involved and kind of see how things are going.
And before I turn it over to the board, this is my 2nd year at West Jefferson as superintendent in the 2nd year. Grew up with Spencer, I've worked with Mark's sisters over at Madison, so know these gentlemen, and I just want to commend our board for their effort in being trained in the roles of what a board member, what it takes. And we've had discussions and book studies on how Brene Brown's Dare to Lead book, which talks about how to have discussions and rumbles is what they call, where we really look at the discussion without it getting out of control. And that's one of the things that we've really worked hard on as a district, and I want to commend our board for that. So Dr. Barzee, I'll let you introduce yourself briefly. And
I like that information about the board, that you've worked hard that way, because that really is the beauty of a board. As you know, you all have varying and different opinions to express and then come across and make the best decision you feel is best for your constituents and students. So that's great, because decisions aren't always easy either. But Spencer Barzee, born and raised a Panther, and a lot of great memories here in the school district and in academics and athletics, and a lot of great coaches and friends still I keep in contact with. Still have family that's here, a brother, and my dad still lives here. So I've been in the West Side School District my entire career, almost 20 years now. Served as a math teacher for a little bit, elementary principal, high school principal, and I'm in year 7 or 8 as superintendent. So we love it at West Side. Hope to be there a long time.
Mark Gee, I'm the superintendent in Preston. I grew up in Sugar City, spent all of my youth there. I played basketball in
the old
gym. I think I even, when I came back from college, I started teaching at Sugar Salem and coaching. And I think I coached in one of the, is there a gym in this old church that I coached one of my freshman games in that gym, but no, I started out as a math and science teacher at Sugar Salem High School, spent a little bit of time at the junior high there as well, but moved in as an assistant principal at the high school, became the principal of the alternative school there in Sugar City, then took over the intermediate school, federal programs director there in Sugar City. And then I spent 1 year from there in Garden Valley, which is north of Boise, a little K-12, one school for all grade levels. They do have a little one-room schoolhouse out in the middle of the Boise National Forest that they still use for 4 or 5 kids. And it's fun to walk in and see a stove, wood-burning stove that they use for heat right next to the line of computers that we're using for the testing. Kind of a crazy thing
Little
there.
house on the prairie.
Right? It was pretty crazy. They do that for students in up to grade 5. But they were on a 4-day week. That was my first experience with 4-day week. And I spent 1 year there, and then as a superintendent and principal, and then I'm in my 6th year as superintendent in Preston. And they were already on a 4-day week, but my first year there, they asked me to go through basically a 6-month study of the 4-day week to determine whether they would stick with the 4-day. They had made the decision during the recession to move and had promised their constituency that they would review that. And so we went through quite an extensive process to review that in our community and see how it would affect ours. So that's my experience.
So I think, Madam Chair, as we go forward, I'd like to just kind of set the stage on what brought us to this work meeting with the background. And then we'll be able to open it up just for discussion and dialogue as we go through. So as a new superintendent, you guys have both experienced that coming in, you didn't ever have control over what was discussed or done previously. And when I looked into it, the history at the 4-day option at West Jefferson, it's been looked into twice, different times over the past 10 years. There was a study done in 2010 and 11 when Dr. Murdoch was here, and around 15, 16 with Mr. Richens. And in both cases, there were studies, people compiled different evidences, they made their comments. Sometimes those meetings got heated. Sometimes people were really upset. And then we're back to it now. We have a new superintendent, and some people are asking in the surveys that I sent out, they're saying, why are you doing this again? Why are you trying to bring this up and tear our community apart? And my response to them was, when I first got hired as a superintendent, that first year calendar was not my calendar. It was not the calendar that I helped develop with the board and with input from the patrons. And I had individuals coming to me and saying, we need to be on a 4-day school week. And I listened to them, and I'm thinking, we've discussed this. It's the same thing. It hasn't been there. Let's not worry about that. I'm a new superintendent. I don't want to worry about that right now. And so last year, when the proposal for a 3-year calendar was voted on for a 1-year calendar, it was with the direction from the board to look into a new calendar, specifically with harvest break. And during that time, I had other patrons still asking about a 4-day school week. So I thought the best way to do this is when I do a survey on the first survey that went out in September, put on there, what's your feedback on a 2-week potato harvest, and what's your feedback on a 4-day school week option. And the survey results came back in favor of a 2-week harvest and in favor of a 4-day option. Both of those either 60 or 70% respectively on those, depending on the patrons and staff that was doing that. So we recognize that there are going to be some that are in favor of this, and we recognize that there will also be some that are against this for various different reasons, and some might be in favor of it for various important reasons. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to want to make sure we're making the best decision for our community, our kids, and our school district on that balance. And just to be clear with the first year's calendar, our professional development, we had an early out Friday, and I felt like we were not being productive as much as we could have done on that early out Friday. And so this year's current calendar with our professional days on Fridays was proposed for us to get better professionally as teachers. We know that from the research, if our teachers are better at what they're teaching, the students are going to improve. And that research shows that has bigger impact regardless of what the calendar is.
Just to clarify, we're no longer doing the early release. We're taking the entire day for teachers.
Yes.
To collaborate.
So right now we have a 163-day student contact calendar. And we have 12 to 13 teacher professional days on Friday where students do not come. We start our school day at 8:05 and we are finished at 3:40. And so we'll be able to discuss that. So some people are asking, with another 25 minutes built into your school day, you're essentially a 4-day calendar. That's kind of where we're at
So you're
right now.
You're in a traditional 7-period semester now?
We're still a trimester, but it's a 6-period trimester.
And how many minutes
Per period. We're at 60, I think it's 60, 61, and we have an intervention / mentoring period that also counts towards seat time
Sure.
with that.
So I'm sorry, how many hours a day are you in school then?
From 8:05 until 3:40.
Okay.
And so
And that's your high school or all schools?
That's going to be the high school for the 990 minutes.
Yeah.
And so the grade schools are 10 minutes earlier,
You're at your 990 there.
but we're exceeding the 990.
Okay.
So those aren't issues that we've had, but I just wanted to give you the view of where we're at. The intention of last year's calendar was not to try to sneak in, let's do the 4-day effort, because we knew that it was, but when the survey result came back saying, hey, let's look into this, that's why we're having the discussion. So I guess at this time we can go ahead and just, open it up for some questions. I'll pull up some of the questions that we've had from what the board put up, but I guess we can get started now. I don't know, Madam Chair, how would you like to start with that? Just
It doesn't matter to me. We can do public comment. Do we have any?
do we have public comment coming through Facebook yet?
No, I don't have any yet.
Yeah, we can start with the board then.
So there was public comment from Mr. Belknap. He came in and visited with me this morning.
Oh, thank you so much.
And he wanted us just to be mindful of the fact that with this, I've invited 2 superintendents that have had experience with 4-day school week, and that we really don't have anybody here to argue against it, but this really isn't a trial. It's not that we need to find somebody that is for or against.
Trial.
But
We're always on trial.
But he brought up some good points and things that I think will come up in the questions.
Great.
Time on the bus for the kids. It's already long. It's going to be just a little bit longer. How does this impact kids with special education or that have struggled with reading? Those are the types of things that are coming out, or having fewer days in line, instead of only going 4 days a week, you're missing out on that Friday for instruction. And so that's, and then another indicator that he had asked was about the initial survey that went out. It was electronic. Did we miss some people? Did we miss some voices? And that's something that we're not making a decision today. And prior to a decision, if the board would like, we could go in and survey through a paper pencil method and reach out to every family in our school to get a little bit more information for the board prior to doing that. So that was patron feedback from him that we can consider and look
One
at.
thing I want to add to that, if we are now going 163 days and we're going 6.6 hours a day, or six hours and something a day, and we go to a 4-day try, that's 148 days. So that's a decrease. That's quite a decrease in days. And so it takes you up to 7+ hours a day. That just seems like we're already going quite late for kids, and then to add another hour.
What are you guys doing in your schools, like in your schedules?
We went from 177 days to 144. So yeah, 177 to 144.
Dave, can you open that door? I think we have a
That's
patron
huge.
out there. A patron can come in.
That seems huge to me.
Well, I mean, it is significant in that perspective. You keep in mind too, our hours were very close, right? So the state, I mean, if you wanted to, you could do a 3-day week, right? Because the state has minimum hours,
Right.
not days. So
Right.
we're still way, like Shane said, we're still way above that minimum of the 990.
We are here too.
But we extended the school day 51 minutes. So right when we went, our day is 8 o'clock to 3:51. And
So that's almost 4 o'clock, 8 to 4.
yeah, it is.
So your kids that are an hour on the bus.
Sure. So the bus concern is a great one, right? Because you're already in school a long day. Keep in mind too, you don't ride the bus on Friday. So you've got one less day of
That
actually
doesn't
being on the
help
bus.
on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday.
Sure. Your days though, I was interested in my mind, if your days are 160, how you get your time in, but when Shane said the time would go till 3:25, that's how you get it. So you're gonna extend your day 25 minutes if you were to make a transition. It's, in my opinion, it's negligible.
That's 4 o'clock.
Yeah, 3:50, if it's if that feels as a con to a patron or a board member, I'd put it on the con list and look at it. To me, if I was a parent, I'd look at my kid doesn't have to ride the bus on a Friday. I was one of the only, Shane and I were some of the only kids who lived in Territon, 5 miles from the school, that rode the bus to Hamer. I was the first one on, the last one off. So I understand a long bus ride.
Yes.
I get that.
Yeah.
So.
Preston goes from 8 to 4.
8 to 4.
That's the high school.
But
The-
but are your surrounding communities a long way away?
They are. So
So
we
then-
actually have about 5 different areas going up several different
So you've
canyons.
got an hour ride.
So there's at least an hour ride for some of our students. So the earliest student that I believe gets on the bus is at 6:50. That's not a lot, but that is the earliest. The latest that they get off, because we do get them to school a little bit before the starting bell. The latest that a student gets back, I believe, is, I think it is 4:55 or something like that. So it is, it's about that hour for those most far flung. The majority of our students have about a 20, if you're averaging, it's about a 20-minute drive. When we didn't specifically, when we put out a survey to our patrons when we were looking at this, because when we were looking to go back, and that's what I can speak to, is they wanted me to analyze the finances They wanted me to analyze the effect on academics, and they wanted me to analyze how our community felt. And when we got to how the community felt, we were asking a lot of different questions of our community about the time and things like that. And so because for me personally, I didn't have a stake in the game. I was just trying to, and that was what the board was trying to come at it from. Not we want it to be this way or we don't want it to be this way. It's we want to evaluate whether it's having a negative or a positive effect and make a decision from there. And so we didn't ask specifically about the bus ride, but that was a concern of those that wanted to move back. That was the biggest concern. But when you started talking about family time, and that's really what we focused our thoughts on was what you consider family time. The patrons in our district who said that they valued the family time were also in favor of the 4-day. And these are people that had lived with it for 5 years, and had, they lived with the hour-long bus ride or whatever the case might be. But they found that the time on Friday was significant for family time.
Don't they work?
What was that?
Don't they work?
Oh, I'm sure they do.
Well, then how do they get family time on Friday? How does that improve?
Well,
family time?
but not all of them are working. So, if they're in a home where both parents work, certainly that's going to be a situation they've got to address. But if they're in a home where one of the parents is at home, then that allows for them to make those adjustments. It also allows for what I heard, and this would be anecdotal, what I heard from families was our schedule changed, our work schedules. We were able to, our employers were sometimes making us able to work longer during the week so that we could be home. And so some employers in the area were making those concessions as well. Because we actually did have employers that were coming to us and asking that we stay on the 4-day because they had made adjustments that made it work for them as well. I can't speak to what those adjustments are, but they did come and request that.
So it's fair to say that there are some people where this could have created a hardship for them when you went to a 4-day school week.
Right. When we did our survey, because it was kind of when they went to it, the way the board described it to me, it was we either go to a 4-day because there's some savings that we can make, or we have to cut this, or this. And so that was the only real consideration at the time.
But in your thesis, in your dissertation, didn't you mention if you're going to go to a 4-day week, you do not do it because of money, because the savings
The
is
way the
so
current form of funding is now, yes, in that situation, it was and still is because of long story, but yeah.
It was several $100,000 savings for our district, and a lot of it was timing, but it worked for us to save money at the time. Our attendance increased when we moved to a 4-day week, and most school districts are in the 90th percentile in attendance anyway. But we saw a 1.5 to a 2.0, depending on the year, increase in attendance, and that, because the state's formula is based on attendance,
Generated money.
that generated more money as well. But I say that because when we made the decision to stay, it was not then because of money. It was because the lifestyle in the community had changed such that the community was asking for it, to the tune of 80 to 85% were supportive of staying with the 4-day week.
When you did your study, and as you said in your dissertation, don't do it to improve your test scores, because that's not a good reason to do it. It's not going to happen. Did you see test scores go up?
What we saw was it depends on the test and the subject. And I've just brought some of my figures here.
Would you agree that it's not a reason?
It's not.
Okay.
It didn't help. It didn't hinder.
Okay, that's That's kind of
We
where I
didn't
got.
see a trajectory down. We didn't see a trajectory up. And it kind of supports what Mr. Williams was describing at the beginning, that a schedule really doesn't affect the academics
Mhm.
as much as what's happening in the classroom.
Right.
And research supports that what a teacher does with their time in the classroom, regardless of how that time is organized, is more important than the organization of the time. And that what we found was that was supported by the data that we found.
That's what I thought we were accomplishing here when we gave our teachers 15 days professional
12 to
development,
13.
12 to 13
Mhm.
on Fridays, and not had students here where they could collaborate. And it took me a little while to appreciate that concept. I agree with it, but that was hard for me to give up those 13 Fridays. The kids
Mhm.
weren't going to be in school.
Right.
And so I had to wrap my head around that, and that added more time to the kids. And now to take even those days away that they're in school, the other days they're in
That
school.
this reduces more contact time, so how does it
Yes,
really benefit? Or
just-
why is it neither positive nor negative? I don't,
Doesn't
Well,
seem-
you're not reducing contact time, you're reducing contact days.
I understand that, but it just seems
Yeah.
like even I get sleepy in the afternoon, and I don't ever take naps, but once in a while I just
I get
want
sleep in the morning.
I get up at 5 o'clock. But I just know that they're gonna
Yeah.
get sleepy and tired during that afternoon.
Sure.
It makes for too long of a day,
Yeah,
doesn't it?
Well,
well, Mark, you've been doing it for how many years now? Has it been?
This is between Garden Valley and Preston. This is my 7th year.
I agree with that, but you're used to it, and I'm just saying,
So you're saying our
Why-
kids can't get used to it?
I think they can.
Like that's the thing, I guess, because
But I'm saying, is it necessary? Is it something that's absolutely,
Mm.
let's do it because it's so great.
sure.
So did you see a cost savings
So we're
in your district going to a 4-day?
We're in year one still.
Oh, so
Yeah.
you're still
We're in year one.
deciding.
Yeah. So the thing about it this was the game changer for us. And honestly, there was nobody that was anti 4-day week more than I.
And we're a neighboring district, so I
You're-
joke with him.
you are
all
the only one in the
Yeah.
whole 6th district region or
Yeah.
5th district region where you
Yeah.
were at.
So Mark's really the reason I went. Because
And I was not trying to convince him. It just.
yeah, no, you still haven't much, by the
And,
way.
and I guess I should say, I'm not trying to convince anybody.
No,
I just want to make sure that
Yeah.
if you have questions, I can answer.
Sure. So for us, research will show you that once you get kids in school, regardless of your schedule, 4-day week, 5-day week, 7-day, or 5-day with your 7-day or hour traditional semester, your 6-day period traditional trimester, schedules don't matter. They're simply a vehicle to get you to getting your day done. But for us, we had Malad, we had Marsh Valley, we had Grace, we had Soda Springs, North Gem, and Preston, all on a 4-day week, and we're doing 5-day. People say, when you go into 4-day week, and it's actually on the board agenda for 2070. So like, we're not going. So when I started my dissertation, I was really interested in a 4-day week because academics are a big thing at Westside, like they are in every district, right? And so I got to looking at it, and it came out that it was pretty obvious that it is not going to hurt or help your academics, which eased my mind. But in addition to that, we had some key teachers that said, we're not threatening, we're just telling you, but we're shopping for a job in Preston. And Mark's like,
And I would have taken it,
Yeah.
just like that.
so for us, so for that 7-8 years, we never felt like the 4-day week really hurt us in teacher retention or recruitment, but we sensed that it was going to start. And so teacher quality is your single largest indicator of student success, academic achievement, right? And so for us, it was a big thing for us to be able to hire a teacher, because when we hire a teacher, especially in the elementary, we have thousands of dollars of time and resources, putting them, training them on curriculum and resources, deployment of all that to help with students. And so we feel like we couldn't afford it. So to lose those. So when we started thinking about that, that was really our single largest reason by far. We would have saved estimate 60 to 70,000 a year. I mean, 80 to 85% of your transportation is mostly reimbursable anyway, so you don't really save much.
Yeah.
So $60,000, $70,000 is a lot of money, but it's really not in a budget our
Less than
size,
1%
right?
of the
Yeah, it's not that big a deal. So for us, teacher quality and retention was a must. And when I was first elementary principal, we would get 40 applicants for elementary jobs. We're lucky to get 10 now, and the top 8 you can shave off in about 45 seconds. Like you can know the quality. And so for us, teacher retention was a must. And we had that conversation with the board. We had community meetings about it that nobody showed up to during the day, in the evening. They were well advertised, and we just said, what are we waiting for? And we've been in it, only been in it since this year, but most everybody is saying, I can't believe we waited so long. I mean, and that's really Westside's, like the Reader's Digest version of our story of the 4-day week is we were anti. The board was anti. The teachers weren't.
Why do you think that the scores are just a little bit less than what the 5-day is? What would be your reasoning for that?
Yeah, great question. So the less is like, are you going to buy lunch at McDonald's for $5 or Arby's for $5.30? That's the less. It's not statistically significant, right? I think I don't think it's enough to say it's less. I mean, that's why the research points that way, is it was less, but you're talking, I think statewide, it was like 1.5%, like 50 to 51.5 or something. But in some areas, like even in some of your economic disadvantage, it actually had a higher scores in some of your subpopulations, which is intriguing, right? Because economic disadvantage is going to show you in most categories, they perform less.
Yes, that's what the research says.
Yeah.
This is going to hurt at-risk kids.
Yeah. So
does it hurt
no,
at-risk kids?
absolutely not.
But doesn't, that's what
Do
he
you
was,
believe it?
I don't believe that it does. Again, because the focus is on what's happening in the classroom. Whether that's 4 days a week or 5 days a week, the teacher and the time that they're spending with that student is what makes the difference.
And the retention isn't a problem over that 3-day weekend.
The retention of knowledge, not that we're aware of, and that would show, again, that would show up in the data. And it just, we weren't seeing a change. And again, the teachers adapted. There were certain things that the teachers had to do to adapt to that, a new schedule. But I guess for Preston, where, you know, it's been over 10 years now that Preston has been on a 4-day week. And it's just become, this is how we know that these are the parameters we have in time. How are we going to get the most out of our students when we do that? And we haven't seen a significant drop in our scores. In regards to retention of employees, Preston, typically where we lose our employees to is Utah. You know, it's right across the border.
Is there a higher pay scale in Utah?
It's a much higher. Well, when I got to Preston, there was quite the disparity. But I got to Preston right as the career ladder was coming into play, and so the disparity at that time was enough to drive people to say, you know what, I'll go to Utah, even though it's a 5-day week. But as that career ladder shortened that gap, we're still below what Utah can offer in any of their schools. Every teacher that goes there is going to get more. But I have a staff of 150 certified teachers, roughly, 300 total employees. When we talk about certified teacher turnover, my first year we were above 20 per year. Every year it's gone down as the career ladder has gotten us closer, and that gap is to the point that now, with the exception of COVID threw things off this last year, but we've been below 8 in turnover out of a staff of 150, which is pretty incredible. And I firmly believe, mainly from anecdotal, just teachers saying, I can't go to Utah, I give up the Friday and it's not worth what little I would make more. And for them, that is again a lifestyle thing. A lot of my teachers will actually go and get a job that they can do on a Friday. Not all of them, but a lot of them will take that, and so it's another opportunity for them to make a little bit of extra money. But
I have a question. How did you deal with the classified help? Reducing that one day, a Friday, that would be a 20% reduction on their wages or salary?
So that really impacts most your bus drivers.
Bus drivers and cooks,
But your others,
maybe janitors.
janitors, some too. Yeah, all your paraprofessionals that way aren't really reduced because your hours work still stay the same, right? The same amount of hours you work on 4 days is equivalent to a Friday.
But so the cooks and the bus drivers are the only ones that consistently have that lower number of hours.
And custodial.
Well, even our custodians, we have a lot of them that are, not all of them, but a lot of them are still working on Fridays because that's an opportunity when nobody's in the building for them to get a lot of those things.
So your power, all of that stuff isn't going to be a save. Those things are not savings. We're not talking about.
We can see, I don't even know. Utilities, we saw a $6,000 savings, for electricity, 6,000, for gas, 4,000. I mean, it wasn't
Not
big at all. For a district our size, that's a pretty
Right.
small amount. But there were some savings that came based on those bus drivers and food service. But we have in our district, and I think it was consistent even when Westside was on a 5-day, we've tried to increase the pay for those bus drivers because
So you tried to compensate for the one
some,
day
but
off?
it wasn't a full compensation. I mean, we're not going to pay them a full day's wage more,
When they don't
but
work it.
we do give them, because most of those
So you try to
bus
offset it a little bit?
most of the bus drivers have an alternate employment anyway. I mean, that's why they took the bus driving job in the first place, because it worked nicely to bookend where they were working during the day.
Is it an incentive in order to retain bus drivers where they don't have to work that Friday?
For some, not all. And again, this is just me talking with them. But I can also say that even because when we did our survey, I did a separate survey for staff members than I did for the community. And when we did that, we separated out the certified. I did it so that I could filter by certified and classified. And when you start talking about the classified staff had the same level of support for staying on the 4-day week as the certified staff. And that included your bus drivers and food service. Now, not all of them were there when it was 5-day, but it was essentially the same. The classified staff in terms of percentage of people that supported. So we didn't see that the classified felt overly put upon, even though there was definitely a difference between what happened with some of them compared to the teachers. But every classified staff that works in the building, their hours changed the same as the teachers, which was not very much.
Did most of the classified employees, did they accept the 4-day or did they grumble a little bit?
Like I said, I wasn't there when they made this switch to the 4-day. So the only thing I can say is that when we made the switch, when we evaluated it midway, at that point, the classified staff had a similar approval rate for the 4-day as to the certified. That's all I can really speak to in Preston, because I wasn't there when they made that switch.
Well, you were there, Dr.
Yeah, how's the transition been at Westside?
We didn't lose one employee over it.
So they accepted it, okay, we'll go to a 4-day and
Yeah, very much so.
we'll make it work?
Yeah, like Mark said, your bus drivers and stuff, most of our bus drivers are retired, people that live in the area, or somebody that, their occupation is just in such that allows them flexibility to get off and stuff. So We didn't lose one employee over it, but it's a great question. It's a great concern because we want to take care of all
You know, I've
employees.
talked with school officials from different areas and they struggle to have enough school bus drivers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It's-
everywhere.
It's a problem.
Yeah.
4-day, 5-day, it's a
I
problem.
got my CDL because of him, actually. He has time to do it. Don't tell him.
We're gonna put Shane in a bus.
I deliberately have not gotten it because I want to be able to say I can't.
I may go after a doctorate, but I don't know if I want to follow the same footsteps as the bus driver. Yeah.
Do you have to make any adjustments to
Just have to do different board members
your
if they want them.
food service? Because that was a question
Yeah,
that came up from a community member is kids are getting home later and they're already hungry as it is by the time they get off the bus.
Oh.
So are you doing anything along those lines for additional food items during the day?
For
to
the-
offset
Oh,
that?
go ahead.
Well, some of the younger kids, I think we provided some snacks in the afternoon stuff, some of the younger elementaries that way, but overall, no, we just adjusted the lunch period accordingly.
And that's similar to us. It was mainly those younger students. So my youngest, my K through 2 elementary has, we have a budget essentially for snacks for them to be able, we were able to do it through the food service program for a while until a rule changed. And then we've just gone ahead and taken that on just to provide a little bit of a holdover. But in our district, we had to make a significant change because we had in our elementaries, and this is just a weird thing with Preston, but there are 2 elementary schools, K through 2 and then 3 through 5 are right next to each other and they were sharing the same lunchroom, which was a very small lunchroom. But there are about 600 students in each of those schools. So you got 1,200 students trying to go through one little lunchroom, which meant that we were starting at, 10:45, sending students down to lunch and then ending at 1:30. And, for those kids that were going in first, that was a very long day.
Yeah.
So we made an adjustment, and that adjustment needed to be made whether we did a 4-day or not, but we have since added an additional cafeteria. That was part of a building plan that we added
how
an
nice
additional
would that be?
cafeteria.
Who does that?
Ours is coming at the end of the spectrum. We're actually starting a new lunchroom and 10 new classrooms. We're growing significantly. This year is the first we haven't grown because of COVID-related stuff, but our high school doesn't eat lunch until 1:17. And so it's late,
Wow.
but because of our growth, we had to shift and adjust. That's just where we're at.
Mhm.
But I guess the point I'm trying to make is 10:45, 1:17, accommodations can be made for those kids that are hungry, because it's a valid.
You have a breakfast program if they're eating that late, right?
Yeah,
And that's what we did. We did the breakfast a little bit later in the day
This is
when we had both.
maybe a little off the topic, but who are these people moving into your areas?
So we are, most of Idaho is classified as rural with the state and federal definition, and so are we. But our district office is 33 miles from the campus of Utah State. And so we're a bedroom community of Logan and of Preston. And so we're growing upwards of 49 kids a year some years.
Really?
And so, our high school, when I was high school principal, we were 161. And today we're at 250, just in our high school. So,
Wow, you've grown almost by 100.
yeah.
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 That's
Where we are at 190, 192 this year.
Oh, well, good.
So it's one of those things where I think when we were in school, we were closer to 250, 240,
Yeah, we had the big classes.
240, 250, but a lot of it just depends on, with that growth. There's a couple of quick questions. Let's hit a couple of these from people that are watching on YouTube. It's okay if I take this one here?
Sure.
So I think we answered this one, but I just want to make sure that we hit it. So it feels like with COVID, we have people, the patrons, impact on special ed kids. Your guys' experience is that that extra day off. I think that's going to be the biggest one. A longer day and one less day for retention. Has it been an impact on the kids that you have been in your district?
Not a significant impact in our district.
Okay.
Same.
Early morning sports practices. How are you guys doing with your gyms? Do you have early morning practices as well?
We do. For the younger,
4:30, what?
no, not that early. Typically 5:30 or 6 is when and it just depends on the team. Most of them can get, because we start at 8 o'clock, most of them, if they start at 6 o'clock, can get an hour and a half practice in and still have time for the students to change and get ready for the school day.
What age group is that? Is that your younger kids? first?
Typically are younger, but it rotates. I mean, it's like we're like any district, there's never enough gym space. We've got one gym at the junior high and 2 gyms at the high school. And we're scheduling and we're trying to work with the teams are working with each other. Drill team is working with.
So it's typical with any sports thing. So I guess that goes back to the length of the day and the fatigue on the kids. And that's really.
So even after school practices. I mean,
Yeah,
they already
after
put
school
in
practices
How many hours at school and they have to practice.
Then they
after.
stay and sometimes they're there till 5:30 or 6.
So when they get home, there's absolutely no time for homework. Maybe you don't have homework in your district.
We do have homework.
You do have homework.
Yes.
Some don't.
Yeah, no, we have homework in our district, and again, it's one of those things where the students and the teachers work together to manage that. So if our teachers try to keep during the week homework down, but some can't. For instance, some of our students are in dual credit courses, and we encourage that. They're going to have to work a little bit harder in those dual credit classes to make that happen. But again, we're not seeing fewer kids aren't taking dual credit because of a 4-day week. In fact, we've been increasing the number of dual credit. We've gone from about 107.
But probably not because of 4 days.
No, not because of, but what I'm saying is that it's not
stopping.
hindering, it's not stopping them. They're not saying, oh, I just can't keep up with the homework, so I'm just not going to take this, because that's totally voluntary to take that dual credit class.
Sure.
And what we're seeing is an expansion of the dual credit class, even though we're on a 4-day week. And so, it's not having that. I could not say that it has an effect on those students, and those would probably be the students with the highest level of homework within our district. But the teachers they try to push things a little bit so that they know when the larger assignment, the larger homework load is going to be towards the Thursday, so that they're not overloading the students on those nights, because they know that time is shorter. From a parent perspective, I've got 4 kids in the school system, and my kids come home, and during the week there are times where they're like, oh my gosh, I've got this and this and this. But I really don't see that any different than what I did when I was growing up. When I was growing up on a 5-day week, it was just some nights I had a lot and some nights I didn't, and I had to learn to manage it based on the time that I had. But
talk about an average student. Maybe your kids are a little above. What about the lower and the average?
Might be recorded here.
You are.
I will say that my students, my children, are along the have a spectrum.
Okay.
I have a very high achieving part of my children and some that have struggled.
Okay.
During this time, I have never had them. The one that has struggled the most is the high achieving one, because he has chosen to take on so many additional courses, and he's facing it right now. He's a sophomore in high school, and he's trying to take dual credit courses, and he's trying to add an extra course in that he's taking on the side. For him, the 4-day week is crazy. He loves Friday, because it is a chance for him to just be a little bit more relaxed at getting that work done. For my other students that are struggle a little bit, they are not overly taxed during the week. I'm thinking to myself that there have been 4 times this year, and so we've been almost a semester, 4 times that I've had to get one of them up early because they weren't able to get the homework done the night before. It just it hasn't affected us that much as far as the homework is concerned. And again, every family is going to address it differently, but it wouldn't be a reason for, if my wife and I and my children were choosing and we had to move today because they don't like what I'm choosing to do I'm denying them to a game or something we had to move today. We,
We understand.
right. We would be looking for a 4-day week if possible, because of the experience that we've had with it. And we experienced when our kids were younger, the 5-day, and then the last 7 years on the.
You know, that's an interesting point. And again, we're speaking on, some of these things are hypothetical. Some of these things it's negligible because is it going to hurt some? Is it going to hurt others? And then how can we really determine what it really takes for kids to build up the stamina on a longer day? But it sounds like the kids that have done it are able to get through it. And so I guess the point on Mark saying I wanted to, on the comment of we would look for a 4-day school week to take our kids to. This could be something that also attracts more students. We had 110 students that come to our district from out of West Jefferson boundaries.
Wow.
If we didn't have 110 students coming in from outside, you look at that, that's 5 or 6 teachers that we lose right off the top. And so 106 students, that changes the dynamic of the income that we're able to get from the state. Maybe this is something that encourages people to continue to come here. Those are all considerations on, we have to have a sweet spot amount of students that are here. We don't have places for people to build right now. And those outside students really have helped us maintain that level. Another question that came in here was about early morning seminary. I think that's probably contingent. It's
Non-existent in our, in fact, there was a push from school officials to have early morning seminary, but it's not an option in our.
So I believe it's offered here, but our start time would be 5 minutes different.
Well,
And then it goes back to the stamina of the student
Sure.
choosing to do that.
when the school district implements 4-day week, you don't necessarily start school earlier. Your start time stays pretty close to the same. You're going to go after school in
I
most
don't think-
cases.
Right.
So,
Just quickly, harvest break. You guys don't have either harvest break in your
We don't.
harvest break. So I know Firth is on a 4-day school week. They have a 2-week potato harvest,
So it's Grace.
Grace is the same.
and they have a 2-week
Yep.
or a 1.
There were 2.
Have to ask them who lives in the boundaries.
So with that, really potato harvest goes back to the discussion in ours with the potato harvest. We start earlier. That's what we've always done. That wouldn't change in a 4-day school week. So sorry to cut you off, Tyson.
no, in your comments, you were saying that sometimes in a class, when you have a bigger assignment coming up, the teacher will kind of plan that on like a Thursday.
Yeah.
Are you finding, and maybe that those students will actually use the time on Friday, or is it kind of the same as your experience with a 5-day week where maybe they'll procrastinate still?
Some will.
It's probably hard to really.
Yeah, I mean,
quantify that.
it varies now on how students approach homework. And so again, it's like so many other things. It just doesn't, people adjust the schedule. It doesn't change their behavior.
Right.
If a person is a procrastinator, a 4-day week's not going to make them not be a procrastinator.
Sure.
But to follow up with that, the thing I worry about is that Friday is just another day for video games and cell phones and texting and a bunch of nonsense that kids are into these days. Idle hands, there's a big percent of the kids that would waste that day doing those kinds of things. And I think we're just pushing these kids into this.
And some of that's probably
Lazy.
true, and I'm not saying every kid comes from a farming background or anything like that, but from
How many kids are on a farm here?
I don't know how to answer.
Well, we
that, I
did
guess,
this. We did
but-
this study, and there was a large amount. I think that correlates with the push for the 2-week potato harvest. Still, it really depends, and I don't think we can come up and.
But in the wintertime, they're not going to be that busy, are they?
But
Or maybe
Unless
they
they
are.
have cows.
If I can share with you another anecdotal experience, the way that my family runs our week, because I'm in and out of my office on Friday. There are still things that have to happen, but on Friday, we have a house and 6 acres. I grew up on a farm and I would love to be near a farm, but I can't get there. But what we do is we take Friday, and that's when we do all of our a lot, if they're not doing homework, they're working out in our yard, in our, whatever the case might be, so that on Saturday, those things are done and we have more time to do things as a family. So because I can't always be there, you know, you said, well, don't they work? Well, yeah, somebody's gonna be there with those kids. They have things that they can be.
What about the kids whose both parents work and nobody's there for them and they're on their own?
On Fridays.
But that could be a Saturday or a Sunday as well.
Could be.
Because they could work there, and if that's the case, why do we have a summer break? You know, because you're looking at schedules on things. If people can arrange
Do-
things for summer,
Does the,
But you're,
are there any studies that show that crime goes up or that kids get hurt?
I
or
can,
that-
only in the inner cities.
I can, but we asked that question. And when we were doing that, our evaluation, we asked the,
Cause I know some pretty knot-headed things that are going on around here.
Well, that-
on
and that's
days when
happened.
there
That's
isn't any
happened on a
school.
5-day
7 days.
schooling. This
Right.
but on a 5-day doesn't stop them from being.
It's one more day, it's one more day,
so
it's one more
we
day.
went, this is the number of juveniles charged with a crime in Franklin County. We went to the 4-day week in 2009 or 2010. We went from 2009, there was 84. 2010, there was 68. That was the year we changed. 2011, 107. 2012, 105. 2013, 92. 2014, 83. And that was when we chose to study that. So there was a spike there, but it did not maintain itself through. And so I could not, as a researcher, go back and say those 2 years where there were more, because the first year of the 4-day, there was actually quite a significant drop. And then the next 2 years, it was up. And then after that, it just dropped back into its normal pattern. I could not say that was because of a 4-day week, because it didn't sustain itself through. But that's one of the things that we did look at. And so, and in talking with our sheriff and our police chief at the time, neither one of them could say that there was more issues on Friday than there were on any other given day with juveniles.
So we had done some research too. We have about 40% of our community that has at least two parents that work.
40%.
40%, which is probably close to where Franklin County is that way. And each family has about 2.5 kids enrolled in school. That all makes sense. But also too, with that being said, and kids being left home alone, there's generally an older sibling, right, that can watch them, or a neighbor there. And so the childcare thing comes up. But the video game or kids not being engaged really is, I mean, there's a concern for some kids there, but it is, I do feel it is the minority too, but local church groups love Fridays now, because now they can take Friday during the day and involved in whatever projects activities that they see fit.
And our county, where our counties are together, when Westside was still on a 5-day week and we were on a 4, we held off on a lot of the sports activity, the youth sports programs, so that we didn't do a lot on Friday because some of the Westside teams were still not able to participate. But now that they're on a 5-day, that's something that they're able to look at more, is having those during the day on a Friday, because now both our whole county, which the youth sports programs encompasses the county, has both districts involved.
So we even looked, we wanted that Friday because we were thinking we're going to save $50,000 to $70,000 a year, right?
Mhm.
And I had planned in my mind that Friday is going to be a day at Westside where we recruit any student that wants to come to school on Friday. We're going to feed them lunch. We're going to bus them in. We're going to do all these things. We're going to take that savings and have a Friday program. And not only to engage kids, but also to increase academics. Well, we sent a survey out and there was maybe 6 kids that were going to come. Parents just said, we're not coming on Friday.
Yeah.
To me, which was further, evidence that we're making the right decision, right? And it was supported by a vast majority of the community. And so we were gonna bring them all in, and it was Spencer's idea, and it was such a good idea, but in the end, we're like, oh, it was dumb. Nobody wanted to come. And bring teachers in. So the only thing we offer on Friday outside of sports related activities is we have high school math tutoring for kids, because that seems to be the subject where we need lots of help. And in the beginning, we were going to do an English, a science, but there just wasn't demand for it. Math, and it's still only a handful of kids that come on Fridays. It's not significant.
Are you on a semester or a trimester?
7-period day semester.
Okay. So how do you accommodate, because aren't there certain high school subjects where there's 3 parts, like algebra 1, 2, and 3, or is it just one half, second half?
Yeah, instead of going to 3 shorter parts, it goes to 2 longer
2
parts.
longer.
Yep. Yeah. And most of those classes too, your core classes, your Englishes, your maths, your science, they're aligned with, and a trimester is the same thing obviously as a semester. That's all guided by the Idaho Board of Education. And so those classes have to be taken one after the other. It's not like a weightlifting or photography that you could get in or out one semester. They've got to be taken 8 semesters or 12 trimesters.
Do you have fewer electives because you're on a semester?
It's all the same. Yep, it's all the same. Unless it's in summary, it's all the same. There are some technicalities there of what you require that way in regards to seminary and how many trimesters of seminary, or if you're going to require so many trimesters of some of your cores and your electives. So, but in a sense, it's all the same.
But going from a 6-period trimester to a 7-period semester would be fewer courses.
Fewer
over a
electives.
year.
The electives,
Fewer electives.
the electives would change.
Right.
That's one thing that, as we've discussed with our teachers, the trimester setup favors the elective teachers. And that's one of the things, if you'd ask our elective teachers, they would want a trimester because it allows that for the kids to have that opportunity. And again, the research doesn't show that a trimester or semester is better one or another. Research doesn't show that a 5-day versus a 4-day makes a difference. It's what we're doing in the class and the connection that we're having with the kids when we have them.
So do you guys do any kind of teacher development like our program here in yours?
So we
Yes.
do,
Yeah.
we do 2 things. We do 5 Fridays a year. And then we also have twice a month, teachers come in an hour before school starts, actually an hour and 15 minutes before school starts. So, and then we trade them on a contract day, right? So if they come in for the hour and 15 minutes in the morning, we take that and equate it to a contract day per se and put it in. So that's how our PD works, is we come in 5 or 6 Fridays a year, plus we give them a couple days before school and some after.
And ours is similar. We have 4 days. Our PLC time, the time for teachers to collaborate, is similar to what Mr. Barkley has described. Where we have less time, and that's something that we're actually trying to build up, because it was quite a bit less when they moved initially. But it's an hour each month that adds up to, no, I'm sorry, it's 2 hours each month that adds up to 2 contract days, so that we can get, but the schedule of that isn't necessarily right before school. Some PLCs need to meet after school, some need to meet before, but we allow that kind of flexibility. But when I was in Garden Valley, it was very different. When they moved to it, they said every other Friday teachers are going to be in the school. And they're going to do professional development, work with students on interventions, gifted and talented, things like that. And so that was just how Garden Valley had chosen to do it versus Preston when they made that switch.
So for me, when we were first going into this and the decision being made, the board said, come up with the calendar and bring it to us for approval. I was like, we're coming in often on Fridays because I'm not giving, that. But really the reason I had to remind myself, the reason we were making the transition was to increase teacher retention and recruitment, right? And we did, and before that, we didn't really have a problem until kind of the end. I told that story earlier. But for me, I went from having lots of Fridays to 5, because if Westside was really doing it for the purpose of recruiting teachers and retaining existing teachers, if I haven't come many Fridays, it really negates the whole reason we went. And so for me, that was a hard balance for me to say, we'll come back to just the 5, because I was stacking them on.
And if that's something that the board chooses to go, I want us to maintain those days on Fridays. I don't know if every other Fridays, probably not. Probably, and the one thing where
That's
Well,
what we said we needed.
we needed that, and that's gonna be part of a proposal that I would put forth. But
Or are
also.
your teachers using their other hours?
But they have those other hours before school, and that's the
Yeah.
thing is where we have 75% of our teachers commuting to our community. Asking them to be here an hour and a half before an early morning school probably isn't going to be as productive. Where I don't think Spencer's majority of his teachers are traveling from.
Yeah, we have some that come from Utah, but it's not significant. One thing too, in my own opinion, and not everybody feels the same about this, is you can have some of those PD times after school too, to help with your travel. People will say, well, what about your coaches? Well, your coaches are a small percentage part of the overall teachers, right? And so the subjects your coaches teach are just as important as any other subjects that are being instructed. But the number of coaches, at least in our district, that would have to stay after school, because we can't say you need to skip practice today. That's not really fair to a coach, right? But we can say you were able to go to practice, we'll make up the time later. It's just like less than 10% are all teachers. So we don't want the tail wagging the dog in that case, if that makes sense.
Yeah. A couple of questions on the transition about Percy and employees. With our bus drivers, we have a couple bus drivers that have the 20 hours on a 5-day with their routes. And this would be something that I would propose to our board. I would hate to have somebody lose a Percy benefit by doing this. So we could to answer that question for our board. We have a bus driver who's receiving Percy benefits. That's because they have 20 hours per week. I'd be open with them driving the route, coming in and volunteering. We have reading programs that we could put them to work on and make sure that they maintain that. We'd hate to have somebody lose that. As new bus drivers come on in the future, that's where we can make that decision. But are there any other issues that, as you guys studied it, teachers in your district with Percy, and maybe this is a Percy question I need to call them, when it comes to retirement? We have some teachers that are close to retirement. By moving to a 4-day school week, will that jeopardize anything from what you've understood?
No change. Percy has that worked out in their algorithm, because obviously your sick days are worth half of your daily rate, right? For a sick day saved. I mean, Percy, the get-go is like, we don't want your sick days worth 20% more in the whole algorithm there. So, Percy's got all that worked out.
They have that.
Stuff.
And so if we were to move to this wouldn't change teacher pay or pension with Percy. Teachers, they have a certain contract hours right now. We would take the hours that are on the current contract, but then just adjust them differently and still maintain the hours that the teachers are on contract. So the teachers, there's a perception out there that the teachers are going to get paid the same for less work. And that's not what we're proposing. The teachers will work the same amount of time. It's just rearranged differently with that.
So if those teachers are, how many hours is it you said teacher, or how many days? 180?
182 contract days.
Contract
And
days.
in West Jefferson, it was negotiated a few years, I don't know when it came in, but it's a 7-hour and 50-minute contract day with the teachers union. So
And how much does this add to that?
So what we would have to do if this was,
That's 1,425 hours.
yeah, and we can on those details, we can get to those later if that's what the board
The
just
question
chooses.
that I had from all that is, one of the things you mentioned in your dissertation was that teachers found they had more time than they needed to, they couldn't use all the time they had. It was too much spare time for them.
In what? Too much spare time in a
Too
4-day?
much time in a 4-day. I mean, they didn't have, I thought we were going to have that up here, but
What do we need to put up? I can get it.
I'll just try to remember what it said, that they felt like they had too many hours where there wasn't anything for them to do. That's good enough. You don't have to bring it up.
What page is that on?
Page
I'll pull it up right now. as well.
25. He's got it. He can pull it up. You don't need to.
And I would see if teachers feel like they have too much prep time, then it shouldn't be used as prep time. It should be used as PLC time, where they're working on identifying the standards. How do they teach the
But your
standards?
teachers don't do that, except for the days you have them come in, the 4 days. What are they doing on those hours before school starts?
Before school, it's either prep time within their classroom or collaboration time with their grade level team,
Departments.
with departments.
Yeah.
We have what we call student assistance teams where they're focusing on, a group of teachers from different grade levels and disciplines are coming together to talk about specific students. They're using their time to do those.
Yeah,
A lot
you
of
might have
those.
been not talking about your own teachers, but.
Oh, yeah,
research.
so all those are just something you have to remember in a dissertation is most of it is research that you're quoting, right? So
Right.
this is from a research study from 2006 that said, it's really saying the same thing Shane was saying earlier, is that they'll take their prep time on that 5th day and use it as prep. Because what happens is you take a traditional school week. Now, probably most, do not have a 5th day for prep time, right? So they just go to school 5 days a week. And that was true in our district. We didn't ever take a Friday. We had a few early outs a couple times a month, but we didn't have a Friday to prep. What this research is saying is if you take that 5th day Friday and have those teachers come and say every other Friday, that's going to give them more prep time than they had before. So that's what that's referring to on page 25.
Let's see. Let's hit a couple of these questions and just get it. And board, jump in anytime you want.
Well, there's another concern I have, and that is
Sure.
that you have 4 days, then your volleyball team leaves on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they go for half a day. They're actually in school during that volleyball time. Such a small amount of time.
Yeah.
How does 4 day help that? I mean, that's to me that,
Well,
That's
West Side
worse.
won the state championship this year with volleyball, so I guess.
well, I know, but
That's
how does,
really-
no,
really
that
is
doesn't have anything to do
I
with how well
know.
they play. I'm just saying the kids.
One thing we did in our region was push our games to start later in the evening. And so not significant, but it helped some. But you have to remember too that, I mean, you're gonna miss in like say a volleyball setting, you're gonna have to travel 8 times during the regular season to leave your district. You're gonna miss 7th period whether you are on a 4-day week or whether you're on a 5-day week anyway. So it doesn't really change that any
These kids
more
are
than
leaving
did
at
before.
1:30
Oh.
sometimes.
Yeah, so like I'm saying, that wouldn't change. There's not any difference there of a 5-day week on a 4-day week. You're gonna miss
Yeah, it's
school at
just
that time.
It's just that it seems to me a perception that you're never in school. You miss Fridays, you miss Tuesday afternoon, you miss Thursday
Yeah.
afternoon. It just seems,
Yeah, 3 sport athletes have always been that way.
yeah.
Actually, it's a great concern because those kids are missing school. But one of the things we've tried to do in our district, like I said, we've moved all of our games to later in the day. But also to, I was going to tell you the second thing. I can't remember. So later in the day is one. Oh, our scheduling. We've taken some of those core classes, like our college classes, some of the classes that have more rigor, and put them earlier in the day. So if we're missing a class often, which is obviously the later the class is in the day, the more likely you are to miss that class. We try to put classes with less rigor at the end of the day.
Yeah, that'd be a good compensation now.
Yeah, that
Getting
would.
all your core classes in the morning.
As many as can, yeah. Yep.
It'd be impossible to have it perfect,
No.
you know, with that where we're sharing
Yeah.
junior high and high school teachers and electives. But that is something that, especially with dual credit,
Yeah,
if a focus is dual credit, and that's where usually the homework
sure. So
loads are a lot more.
in smaller size districts, you have like your math and your English and your sciences, all those dual credit teachers, they teach regular high school courses and dual credit also, right? And so you can't say remove all the English in the first half of the day, right? But you can take all your dual credit or your higher rigor courses and put them earlier on in the day. And technically, if you get it before hours 1 through 5, maybe hours 1 through 6, you're going to take care of it. And so it's not a restriction on the schedule that's going to negatively impact you at all. It's very doable. And it's a great question.
So let me hit a question that just came through YouTube Live, and I think I can clarify this. It might be just a misunderstanding with how absences and days. So one question that came through: would absences on a 4-day be counted as 1.25 absences? And it goes back to, it's not the days in school that are counted in Idaho. It is the hours of time over the year and then how we schedule that within.
Yeah.
And so so to answer this question directly, it would not be counted as 1.25 absences because we're not looking at days in school, we're looking at time in school. And then we can decide as a board what that schedule looks like.
If I remember right, we went from 8 absences a semester to 6. Like we modified our policy.
Yeah.
It was 8 for 5-day and then 6 for 4-day. And that's gonna be different a day or two, but.
And that's similar in Preston.
Do you still include holidays in that 4 days? Or most holidays are Mondays, so there's another day gone. Or do you-
We only take the Monday holidays that are required.
what are those?
President's Day.
President's Day, well, and President's Day isn't even required, but we do take that one because of
You
another
don't
thing
take-
in our
you don't
district,
take
but
Martin
Labor
Luther
Day.
King then.
What?
You don't take Martin Luther King Day, you don't take.
Oh, so,
We do Labor Day and President's Day.
so
Those the
are
only
you
two
in on Martin
Monday.
Luther King Day?
And
The only-
Memorial Day,
the only
that's.
district
all-
Memorial Day, we're out
You're out.
before
My
then.
region, nobody else observes that day.
What was that?
Pocatello is out on that day?
No, none of the other districts in our region. are
See,
on that
that's-
day.
And that's the thing is when you're looking at a 4-day schedule, it doesn't mean, there will be some people out there that will say, I 100% want every single Friday off. And if you veer away from that, then that's not a true 4-day school week. You could look at that a couple different ways, like the week of Labor Day, for example. We could on our schedule say we miss Labor Day, but let's come to school 4 days that week. 'Cause
Our alternative school does it that way because we're on 3-week blocks
Blocks.
at our alternative school. So if there's a Monday holiday, our alternative school comes on Friday.
And because of potato harvest, we are going to probably on our draft ones that I've looked at, both, we're gonna have to slide some of those weeks. It's not gonna be where
That's if we do it.
that's if we do it.
Yeah.
But we slide some of those weeks right now on our hybrid schedule anyway. And so that's what I'm saying is
Sure.
anything with the things that have come back is if the board votes on a 4-day week, we're still it's gonna be proposed that there's a 2-week potato harvest. That's just what the survey results are coming out and saying, these are the things that we're looking at. But a 4-day school week doesn't mean every Friday is automatically off because you still have to have a certain amount of hours built in. And if the community wants to have a 2-week potato harvest and be done by Memorial Day, you still have to find some time to come to school.
Well,
And so
yeah.
if you have a 2-week potato harvest, and we have 1 full week between the Mud Lake Fair and when school starts.
Yeah.
You still have to find a way to wiggle some Fridays in.
So Mark and I are the same in Franklin County with the fair and all that. And so in true story, we don't get complaints about the calendar very often. But when we do, I just say, look, a kindergartner could put the calendar together because if you want out before Memorial Day and want to start out X many days after your fair, here it is. Like there's really no flexibility there. I mean, it's off. Are you going to come to school? The questions are usually, are you going to come to school the day before Thanksgiving? You're going to come to school on the 23rd of December. Those are really your questions. And that there's no flexibility in those days because you've got your fair, same thing Franklin County. You want to have Memorial Day, we're all the same. And so those days, if they don't want to come to school on those days, you better pick your Fridays you want to come to school because there's just no flexibility with scheduling.
On that. When you guys switched, I'm gonna hit these really quick. Teacher morale, we've talked about teacher recruitment and retention a little bit already. Teacher morale, student morale on a 4-day school week, at least from what your observations are. You probably, Spencer, have the most from a 5-day to a 4-day. Speak on teacher morale on that.
It's never been better. It's never been better.
Did you have some teachers that, because we have teachers who aren't in favor of this. We have some teachers that are in favor of it. I think that's just normal. Did you have some teachers that were hesitant before?
1 to 2 out of 50 certificated staff.
What were their concerns?
Longer day, younger elementary. And that's the common one you're going to get. And it's valid, right? As your younger kids will have a harder time adjusting. But keep in mind, too, you've got 15 traditional school districts in the state, give or take a few, and you have almost 50 of them now are on 4-day week. And you had Shelley and Blackfoot. I don't know if you remember me talking to Blackfoot, to Superintendent Kress, but he was concerned about teacher retention and teacher recruitment because of Shelley and Snake River, right now they're only district in the county not on a 4-day week, you're gonna lose teachers. And there's truth to that. And so that's a big thing there.
student morale. Like how have your kids, you have kids in high school, you have kids in elementary school personally,
Yeah.
and then just being able to observe that.
Do they perceive it as getting off? Do they perceive it as a win for them that they're not in school? I'm concerned about kids for their future when
Yeah.
they have to go to work 5 days a week. Are they going to be the kinds of kids that?
No, so a great question. I have 6 kids, 2 girls in high school and then 4 boys who are great at fist fighting, by the way, especially on Sundays.
Being a varsity.
And, yeah, and they got some bad habits from their mom's family. But
This is recording. This is recording.
so, but my high school girls have jobs. They're very active in athletics. They're 3-sport athletes. They're very rigorous in their course selection, and they are stars at recreation. And so for us, the 4-day week, and to start with, my wife wasn't necessarily in favor of it, but we are advocates of the 4-day week at our house. It gives more time for my daughter attends the tutoring for math every Friday, and it gives them more time for their jobs to balance that, and also to recreate and spend time as a family. Even though a lot of those things that are done normally on a weekend can be done on a Friday or Saturday or vice versa, and you can kind of trade those days. And that was one of the early advocates of one of the community members came to us and was an advocate because of the family time that it would allow them. So, and I recognize it may put burdens on some, but you'll find that most will appreciate the time.
Speak more on the teacher, I guess, morale. You're halfway through, and this year is not the typical year anyway, but your school has been in school. You haven't been doing remote days or anything like that there.
Correct.
So
Correct. No remote days.
So you've had a pretty normal year considering COVID.
Absolutely.
With everything. Why do the teachers like it? At least from what you've heard.
Sure. Well, they, I think, appreciate the full day prep days, right? To be able to have that full day of prep and prepare. And it's not just time of your faculty meetings, but you've got your English departments in grades 6 through 12 or science and math getting together and grading DWAs. We're talking about curriculum implementation. There's a lot that obviously from transition from middle school to high school there, but also too, they like their personal time. And what you're going to find is substitute costs are going to go down. Your teacher going to be at work more. Your kids are going to be at work more. It's caused our district to implement a late start because now that your a school day has increased value, right? Because you have less days. So we now, if there's a day because of inclement weather, where there's snow, where we don't get as cold as you get here. But we were water skiing this morning before we left. But what it allows there,
late start.
Yeah, late. Thank you. We now start at 10 o'clock instead of 8 if the roads are snow or whatever, and then you still have 45-minute class periods. It's still plenty of time to be able to instruct and get a lesson. And so we make the call by 6:30 if we're going to have a delayed start or not. Text, email parents out so they know that. And that usually gives, if it's cold, it gives enough time to warm up, or to get the snow plows, give those guys some more time to get the roads cleared.
So I'm thinking about on page 40 of your.
I hope you have plenty of water when you're reading that thing.
Growing concerns. Will you talk about those?
Your page 4, okay.
I hope it's the same. It's under growing concerns.
Yeah, and so whenever there is a major change in related to school made, whatever it may be, one thing that's going to drive that is if it's going to impact academics, negative or positive. So what you have is a couple states such as California and Missouri and even Oklahoma just asked that if these school districts make the transition to a 4-day week and their academic performance drops to a certain level, we then look to see if that was 4-day week related. And if we felt like it was, we would then mandate that district go back to a 5-day week. So in Idaho specifically, if you look at there, I think there was only been one district to go back to the 4-day week, or to the 5-day, and then they transitioned back to the 4. The Idaho research has been pretty clear and mostly nationwide that if you make the change, you're not going back.
So why would some of these states, and I guess you can't speak for your research, like New Mexico is temporarily prohibiting schools from transitioning into that? Did they feel that was just detrimental to them,
I don't
or?
know. That's a great question. I'm not sure why.
You know, and I guess that would be the question that some of the patrons would have, because it appears I couldn't find somebody regionally that is in a 4-day school week that hates it.
Right.
I don't know of one, and
Sure.
and I've had patrons say, well, I can go on and search out from different states and find superintendents that didn't like it, but again, I guess we could
There were
find
quite
some
a few that
people,
went back. There were quite a few that had.
but again, it's
But
what
they're
is
not in
your,
Idaho.
it's not in Idaho.
Right.
And that's the part that we could probably search out somebody that has similar, like, political things. You can look at and say, well, let's call California and say, why didn't you do this
my
way?
concern about this is that if, I wonder if we're gonna be competitive in education in America against some of the other countries. I feel like this is a saying that education isn't important enough to be 5 days a week. And I understand the hours and it's the same amount, but it just has that appearance of education is not important.
You're worried we're gonna dumb down people.
Yeah.
Well, I think a way to at least think about or talk through that question is, what if you went the other way? What if we're gonna say that it's the number of days is equated to the importance that we place on it, on education? Well, what if we went to 6 and just lowered the amount of time? So it's still the same amount of time, but now we're spreading it out over 6 days. Does that now mean that we're going to be it's more important to us? Because we have decided that we're going to go Monday through Saturday. I don't know that we would make that same argument going the other way, where you say it's the same amount of time, but we're gonna go from 8 to 2.
It feels like cramming. It feels like cramming this stuff in and not.
Right, but can you see where if you take the opposite argument,
I understand.
you're saying the same amount of time, but what really matters is the number of days, because the number of days indicates how important it is.
I do. I think that number of days, that repetition, that relearning, that just reinforces that to the kids. But
So one thing
and they always say in every study you read, the results are inconclusive. The results don't say. The results, we have no results.
don't we want to have some conclusive things so we know exactly the right thing?
Well, it did. All
Right.
And I went to the internet. I searched in other states, other places, because Idaho, I don't know if this is the right thing to do, but other places they're saying they're going back to 5. This worries me. Just
Have we seen any
I
other
don't want to be the great experiment.
Idaho schools? And I don't think we're on the forefront of experimenting either. There's been 10 to 15 years of, what did you say, 50 plus out of the 128 school districts?
But not very many are
Almost
doing it.
almost 50. So if you go to the State Department's website under finance, they have the list that's inclusive and they've tracked it.
I guess I'm not real solid about Idaho being the leader in this.
Don't trust Idaho's.
I don't, not yet. I mean,
Well,
eventually, but
I mean, I think the big push started in 06, 07
right.
there. And so you're at least 15 years in 06, 07.
And
as
Idaho is still quite a ways down the ladder, so we're not making
Yeah,
huge strides.
true. Keep in mind the research says that there's no significant negative impact with it though. You're at, what did I say, you started at 6. I mean, including charter schools, you're almost 70 districts in the state of Idaho.
Yeah, but I see why they're doing it too, but I'm not sold.
Yeah, well, there are great concerns out there.
Yeah.
There really are. I mean, I think it's just something you have to look at that pros and cons, decide if it can influence your teacher retention and recruitment and the other factors too.
You know, and I wonder, and this is something that I haven't seen any study on though, is when you look at educating a child, that entails so much more than just academics. And we've seen that with when COVID came in, the social part, the extracurricular part probably impacted kids just as much as the social. And when you look at, does more time always equal better? And you look at other countries, some of the Asian countries that have kids going to school on Friday and
Saturday.
excuse me,
Until 5 o'clock
Saturday.
at night.
But you also look at the mental health
But
statistics.
sometimes I don't think our mental health is any better. We're having suicides.
We are, but not at 20%.
No,
You know, and when you look at
but their life is a lot harder than ours.
but is that partly because of their culture, their tradition? And are we looking at a 5-day school week as culture and tradition? Is it one of those things that just because we did it, is that the reason why we are successful now? And that's the part where I don't know if it is or isn't. Maybe that was the sole reason why we turned out the way we did. But as these guys are looking at their districts, the research shows that they have opportunities. And I think it goes back down to, if the district were to choose this, again, the 4-day week or the 5-day hybrid that we currently have is just a tool. It's what we do in the classroom that ultimately is going to do it. And that's been the focus that I've had from.
Maybe this
from the
doesn't
get-go.
need to be said here, but I was anxious to see how we did with this hybrid. I was anxious to have a couple of years with that, or to see if our scores came up, if we improved.
Thanks to COVID, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that we're way
Yeah.
behind right now, so that's going to be hard to judge. And then jumping into a 4-day week seems a little bit right in the middle of things when we're on the right course right now. And we think our scores are going up and we think we're doing well.
Yeah.
To jump over into another situation and leave this one that we were pleased with, weren't we? Pleased with, seems a little rash and a little bit not right now, please, or.
Well, I don't know if there's ever a time, because you're gonna have some people. I think COVID
But we
pushed.
don't know how we're doing now. We don't know how
Yeah.
we're doing. And in the mid course, we change streams. Just a thought.
I have a question. Has the 4-day affected your graduation rate at all? Is it really high? Like,
Well, we've had a few, I guess, when you take are you talking the new standards for measuring graduation or the old standards? Are you familiar with how that's different?
We haven't had a discussion.
Oh,
If you
okay.
wanna-
I just,
we haven't had a discussion on that.
so what I'll just answer based on our current status of graduation. Our graduation numbers are inching up, not
Have they been a
dropping.
little disappointing in the past for you then? or-
They were disappointing in the past, but we've been working on that in different aspects. Some of that is driven by our alternative school, where you naturally would expect there to be a lower graduation rate. But at our traditional high school, we're like I said, we're inching up
What kind of an alternative school is it?
to high school, 9 through
is?
12.
Okay,
Yeah.
and what puts them there?
Well, there's a lot of different circumstances. Sometimes it's just,
Juvenile delinquents.
sometimes, but not always. Sometimes they've just, for different life circumstances, they're behind.
Okay.
And so there's no way for them to hit graduation within the stated, the school setting,
Okay.
the regular school setting. But the way that they do graduation now, if a student starts with your school and then chooses to drop out,
Yeah.
or chooses to go somewhere else, if you can't say where that student has gone, it still counts on you. For instance, when I was in Garden Valley, I had a student, we knew the student was in Idaho Falls, but custody said he was supposed to be in Garden Valley. So that's where he stayed. And the new rules required that he graduated from Idaho Falls and counted on theirs, and
that affected your rate.
Affected our rate. And so some of that change in calculation has happened since we've made the transition. And so that's why I say it's hard to say for sure, but we are inching up in our graduation rate. Hopefully COVID doesn't change that.
How about you, Dr. Farzi?
Graduation rate,
Yeah.
it hasn't impacted it at all. I mean, we're still early, but
Yeah,
You don't
you've
have a
just been
reason.
in 1 year, you say.
yeah.
Not fair to ask that then, right?
Does your food staff offer food services to students on Fridays when there's no school?
We do not. Yeah, we do not.
And we do not either.
So at-risk kids get hurt a little bit in this.
So I guess we have to define how we interpret out risk too. Yeah.
Well, your poverty kids,
What is the demographics of your district? What's free and reduced?
Last year we were 51%.
Which
We
is,
were at 48.
so that's pretty high.
that's exactly what we are.
Yeah, we're there.
So
No.
It's
I
typical of
I think
Idaho.
there's, so I guess we have to be sure when we define at risk and poverty, what really is there. Because if I looked at a list of kids in our district on Entrepreneur's Lunch, I can pick out the ones for you that are going to go hungry on a Friday. Okay, and there's a few. Now, if I'm in a district with a high percentage of certain ethnic groups, I'm going to be really concerned on a Friday, because really a Friday really is a day they get cooked meals and they get a place to be warm. That really is a concern within our region. But I don't believe that it's a significant detriment in your community or in Franklin County. When we define at risk or free and reduced lunch, it means it's obviously turned upon the amount of kids you have in a home and also your income, right?
Yeah.
But it is an indicator I get of kids, but I don't think that we're putting kids that are at risk by not having a hot lunch on a Friday.
What does your tutoring services look like on Friday? You just
Math, secondary math only.
So is that a voluntary program on a
No,
Friday
yeah.
or?
We pay teachers and students that day. We have our math department say, we recommend student A, B, and C to help. Because if you come in that day, you need help. So we hire students to come in. We also have a certificated staff member that's there monitoring that.
So you have students that help other students?
Yep.
Oh,
Yep. Absolutely.
that's good.
Just in math. Huh?
Yep, just a math. There just wasn't a need.
So if you've got kids that are failing throughout the 4 days, if it's not math, they have to.
So we
Find
just
another
encourage
way.
those kids to come in after school like they would on a 5-day week. They're to meet with teachers or before, or have teachers.
See, that's what I like about this program that we have, is that collaboration says this
Mhm.
student needs, and we have that intervention, and
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, you're gonna hear that too when your teachers are eating lunch, and they're talking in the hallway. And that collaboration happens. We don't have to have a structured formal time for that collaboration to happen, even though it's good that way, but you're gonna find that great collaboration you're referring to happening at various times in the day. I mean, I was at a lunch with the middle school staff this week when the English teachers mentioned a name, actually two, concern, this kid's doing better. How about this kid? And there's coordination there
Yeah, but
with that staff.
boy, we thought we had a good thing by having this 13 days where they could.
Those days would still continue. Regardless of whether we stay with the hybrid schedule that we have right now, or the board chooses to go the 4-day, we will continue with that teacher professional development.
What have each of you learned from this process? Is there anything you would change in implementing it, or during the time that it's been going? Any changes you've made?
The biggest thing I would do is what it appears you already have in place. When Preston made the switch, there wasn't as much focus. Again, they were making the switch primarily for that financial reason at the time. When they did that, they didn't focus as much on professional development. And so as we've been going along, it started out with not a lot of professional development. So once people get used to that, it's harder to break into other things. So we've been adding, and we've been strengthening our professional development, but from the beginning, that would be something. And again, from what I can see from your calendar and what you've described here today, it sounds like you've got a very robust professional development plan in place, that if that remains in place, I don't think you're going to have a concern, that same concern that I had. But that's probably the biggest thing that and I think part of that too was me coming from Garden Valley, which had every other Friday situation, to Preston, where there wasn't as structured a plan, because I could see the benefits that come from having that professional development on there. So that would be probably my biggest takeaway from it.
So on this one sheet, and I just wrote page 38 down because I thought I was going to have it in front of me, but this patron's actually written it out. Even though the early adopters of the 4-day school week in Montana outperformed the state averages in time, nearly every single method of measurement indicated that the students in 4-day week schools are achieving proficient and advanced on MontCAS at a lower rate than the rest of Montana's schools. One discovery was elementary writing scores for students on the 5-day week were significantly higher. What makes Idaho different from Montana in this case? Probably.
I don't know. I remember looking at just districts in our region that were on a 4-day week, and they were higher than most districts in the entire state and some there. And so I don't know what the data is. I mean,
when you look at some of those, going back to teacher quality, when you're doing a research study, they have to find something that's equal between all the groups, and that's just the test score. Yeah. But it doesn't always go back and show what was the professional development of these schools. Did those 4-day school weeks not have the professional development embedded into it? Where we have the example from when Preston first went, it was for academic financial, for economic reasons. If that's why Montana schools went into it initially, maybe they didn't have the professional development built into it. These are all assumptions, and I guess they're things that we could assume on that. But the Hattie research goes back and doesn't say there's a difference between a 4-day and a 5-day school week. It's what you do with those top things, with having a robust teacher collaboration, teacher professional development. The teacher is one of the most important things that can impact the kids. RTI, response to intervention, those are the things that.
And that's what we're doing here.
We're doing that.
And I would like to see how that works at a future board meeting. I would like to see if that is indeed doing what we wanted it to do.
Yeah.
And if it is, are we risking ourselves?
Are we risking losing that?
Yes.
I think it would be similar to the evidence, where I don't think it would matter.
Consistently all the way through here, though, your scores were lower. Not a whole lot, but they were consistently all lower.
Well, keep in mind, the research will always point to statistically significant. And again, it goes back to, you're going to buy lunch at McDonald's for $5, you're going to buy it at Arby's for $5.30. I mean, the factors in there, the difference in there. What was that?
You want to buy a salad for $5 or another salad for $5? He doesn't like Arby's or McDonald's.
Nedra's not a hamburger eater.
You could have low scores even on a 5-day schedule.
Yeah.
And
but
how would you explain it?
Right, but we have done something here. We have set something in motion. And I want to see how aren't you guys interested in seeing how this comes out?
I was until COVID came and threw everything up in the air anyway, where we had some people, when we tried our, when we had our hybrid days in September, we had some people coming in and saying, hey, if you're going to try this, we might as well push it to a Friday. And we had all those discussions. I don't know. It's one of those things that I guess making this decision, though, from what the research says, doesn't matter if you do it one way or another. But Spencer's, your test scores in West Side have been some of the highest in the 2A ranks, right?
1A through 5A.
1A through 5A, West Side.
Yeah.
West Side is one of the positive ones. I just got a text coming in from Mr. McDonald saying our test scores have been improving over the last 4 or 5 school years. Now, is it the 5-day school week that's making that improve? Or is it the focus that the high school has started to have the last couple of years on being focused on teaching standards, teaching to those standards directly? Those are the things that are indicating the mentoring period that we've had in. We've had other things that will still continue regardless of whether we're on a 4 or 5. But out of that, we haven't been one of the highest schools. That's probably a lot of pressure that Spencer had when he was going through this process. And that's probably one of the reasons why you were so adamant about staying on a 5-day school week when you were there, because you are one of the best when it comes to that. So I guess you could probably answer that same question is,
You've got to just analyze the best practices. And sometimes we like to roll our eyes and talk about research, but Patty's research is clear. There's lots of research that's clear on schedules, 4-day week, 5-day week, trimester, 6-period day trimester, 5-period day trimester, semester, 7-period day semester. They're just all vehicles to get us there. It's just, you just got to look at those. But I'm telling you, I looked at school districts in our neck of the woods, Grace and Preston and Soda Springs around. They all had strong areas of academic performance, and they had all been there for many, many years. And so in my own opinion, my own years of research, your academics will not be negatively impacted whatsoever. Now, if you discontinue or don't implement best practices, you will. Or if you don't have high quality teachers, you will.
I have a question about your test scores. You know, with the research that says that they're lower, are those schools already low because of where they are? Are they already, because you said most of the schools that go to 4-day school weeks all are rural, which rural tends to indicate higher poverty rates.
Sure, your only districts that aren't rural are like Boise and,
maybe your Bonneville.
Kuna, yeah.
And so were those test scores low already, and they just dropped a little bit?
So in summary, all I did was take 4-day, 5-day, compare. I didn't necessarily take the transition there. And when I started the research, I wanted to take those that went from a 4-day to a 5-day because we have enough to compare. But in there was also the change with Common Core standards, right? So now we can't compare two set of standards, so that negates the research. Even though you probably could have got a good idea, it's going to lose its validity when you start comparing people on a different metric.
Which is a fair question that Nedra's bringing up. We don't want to lose any momentum. And Mr. McDonald just texted me back with an exclamation mark. We're getting close to the state average. It's not like we are close to the state average, where West Side has been at or above the state average. And that's why, probably more pressure on where he's at. But to just reiterate, we have to keep with best practices regardless of whichever calendar is adopted.
Good.
So I think Madam Chair, do you have any others that you're seeing on there? This has been a full 2 hours.
I'm just grilling you guys.
When do you guys typically start school in your districts?
After the fair.
That's right.
It's usually about like
August?
20th of August.
Last week of August, usually.
Yeah, it's in the 20th of August.
And then are you out before Memorial Day?
Always.
Always.
And how long is your spring break?
They
1
don't
week.
have spent vacation.
Whole week.
1 week for spring break.
They don't
But
have
you do not
spent-
have a harvest.
No harvest.
No
no
spud harvest.
That makes the whole difference.
Yeah, they gain that 2 weeks.
We've got to deal with the harvest.
We only take 2 Mondays off a year. We take Labor Day and President's Day off.
And you are both on a semester,
Semester, 7-period.
7-period semester with 144 contact days, I'm assuming.
Yep. I think our
What-
future contract days are 160 something. 160.
How long at Christmas
Two.
is your break?
So this year we go through the 22nd, which is pretty typical. It always kind of depends on how that falls.
Yeah.
Typically we'll never come back just for 1 day only
Yeah.
a week. Right.
Mhm.
And that's what
Yeah.
we have is 2 on that.
Similar.
Thanksgiving's always 2 days.
What do we do? So 2 weeks, we come in for 2 and
Yes.
stay out for 3.
Yep.
So we have a few luxuries thrown in our,
Well, I think, when we talk about losing momentum, I think a 2-week break after only being
Yeah.
in school for a few weeks is a huge loss of momentum.
yeah, it is. But
Mhm.
once you're out for 2 weeks, another day, it's gonna help you.
Yeah. Trying to think if there's any other things that, Spencer, if the board does choose to go that direction, when you went from vote to implementation, what were some of the things that you did that were helpful?
You know, quite honestly, it wasn't that hard. The biggest thing we did is we asked teachers to start taking weekly notes on lessons, on how they could take a 5-day schedule and put those lessons down in force. That's really the only thing of significance that we did. The calendar took a couple hours, right? That's not that big of a deal. Everybody around us has a calendar to look at and modify. But instruction, what happens in the classroom, like Mark said, is what we're after. And so we just asked teachers to really give some thought, to make some notes. We even allowed the administrators to view them. These are the 5 days. This is going to condense it to 4. I would recommend condensing this parts of lesson, the 5-day lesson, into this and this and this, so we didn't miss anything, right? Because you're not really going to cut content because you're still instructing the same amount of time. You're just combining lessons. So that's what we did. And that's the benefit of making the decision sooner than later, is it gives your teachers more time to prep and to consider how they're going to modify lessons.
Page 90, implication.
Yeah.
Says don't go into it lightly.
Yeah, maybe it's because Spencer's the one sitting in the district office taking afternoon naps, but the implementation process some people say we gotta get it done. Teachers are great.
Yeah.
Teachers understand content and curriculum and instructional strategies and engaging the classroom. Your teachers will rise to it and they'll do great with it. Does it take some work? Yeah, it takes some work, but it's not anything that we just need to lose sleep over at night.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay.
That takes me to the end of my question.
You're done with your questions? Well, just under 2 hours. Perfect, Andrew. Well, Madam Chair, I don't have anything else, but before again, I'd just like to thank both of our superintendent guests for coming. If you know of anybody that is just another superintendent that would want to come and share a different experience, but I know that you guys weren't here telling us what to do. You're not here telling us you must do it because you're in your own different districts. We have, we're both rural districts, but at the same time, it's been very helpful for our board to be able to get that.
Absolutely.
Madam Chair, I'll let you finish up the meeting if you.
Mrs. DeGraw, did we have any other more comments? Okay. No more questions?
Is some of the smaller districts in Utah, are they doing this as well, 4-day, or are they still majority 5-day?
I don't know how many. I know Rich County, Utah, that's on the other side of Bear Lake over there. They've been on a 4-day week for a long time.
Gotcha.
Outside of that, I don't
But
really know.
most Utah's big
Big
schools.
schools are all.
Are they mostly 5 days?
And then, and
Part of
then
the-
year round and
Year
on
round
top
too?
of each other and all kinds of.
Part of the year-round one is because they have to rotate students throughout the year.
Because of
Yeah.
such,
July's the only month that the schools are out completely.
Another issue they run into is that in Utah, they are county-wide districts for the most part.
Right,
And when you're a county-wide district, you have large schools, small schools,
Yeah,
small
yeah.
communities.
everything.
And so to try and make a transition for one small community when your other schools are on a different schedule, it makes things difficult, especially for staffing and collaboration meetings and things like that. So you don't see that as much when you're dealing with county schools.
Right.
And it's not just small schools, Superintendent Gee is in a 4A school district.
Mhm.
And this year,
Blackfoot.
Blackfoot, Middleton,
Shelley.
Shelley have all moved to a 4-day week.
And so,
Well, again, we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for coming,
Yeah. You betcha, no problem.
putting up with our our questions. Yeah, if we don't have anything else, the floor would be open for a motion to adjourn.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn this meeting.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?